In this video, initially posted in the summer of 2020, I show a comparison of sorts between the charts of Donald Trump and Adolf Hitler. The main point being that in both cases, the Saturn cycle becomes critical in showing a final outcome that was very negative in both cases. Of course, a lot more negative in Hitler's case because it represented the end of his life. But you will see how Saturn's cycle was connecting to Trump's chart during 2020, and most especially as the election was happening, which is what made it basically impossible for him to win. This isn't to go into a long story about Trump's inclinations to be a fascist and therefore put him in the Hitler camp, nor is it meant to be an exhaustive comparison, which I do think would be very interesting, but I will save that for a later date. Here I am simply trying to show a couple of key transits during key moments that their respective charts share, and which may turn out to be quite telling. If you've seen my videos, you would have come across references to the zenith, the point in the sky that is most perpendicular, most elevated when we are born. It is at the degrees that precisely square the horizon, the ascendant and descendant, of any chart. For comparison, the midheaven is also elevated, but can tilt left or right of the zenith point, depending on where you are on planet Earth. In Trump's chart, the zenith is at the very end of Taurus, while the midheaven is around 24 degrees of Taurus. In Hitler's case, the zenith is around 27 degrees Cancer, while the MC is in early Leo, around 4 degrees. Hitler gained power in the decade of the Great Depression, the 1930s, and a quick scan of the ephemeris shows you Neptune transiting through Virgo and therefore in trine to his Taurus planets, Sun, Venus, and Mars. Neptune tends to be indispensable for a politician's popularity, and indeed, during that decade, the German populace was fully behind him. By 1942, Neptune had entered Libra, and the war was starting to go badly for the Nazis. It's not like Hitler lost his popularity in this case, though perhaps if they had taken polls in which Germans weren't scared of being killed for telling the truth, he might have. But what matters is, the sign switch of Neptune was really bad news for the Führer, and it was confirmed when upon reaching 6+ degrees in early 1945, Hitler went down into the bunker and basically never really came out. That is Neptune in exact square to his moon, which is the ruler of his zenith, his career, his public image, his honor, and his rank. It is documented he committed suicide April 30th, 1945. By then, Neptune has retrograded to 4+ degrees Libra, but as I've said a few times on this channel, look back to see where it's stationed, and if the degrees are higher, that's still where the action is. That would be January at 6.5 degrees. So, effectively, at the time of his death, Neptune was squaring the moon, ruler of his zenith. Now look a little more, and you see a couple of fast movers, Mercury and Venus, transiting at 17-18 Aries, opposite his natal Uranus. But then you look a little more, and you see the big one. Saturn precisely opposite his natal moon in late April 1945. Saturn squares his ascendant ruler Venus at birth, Mars too of course, but it does so to the 8th house, the death house, making it a very dangerous planet, if you give it triggers like this, having an entire allied army about to overwhelm Berlin. The moon itself is ruled by Saturn, so Venus, Mars, Sun, Saturn, and Moon are all linked by rulership. On a side note, notice that the Jupiter trine to Venus and Mars in late April didn't help save him. About the only thing I can think of that might be considered positive would be that he was able to take his own life instead of being captured and faced who knows what from the Allied powers. Now take a look at Trump's chart. You've heard me say multiple times that Trump's entry into the presidency was astro-facilitated by the Neptune trine to Mercury he was riding back in 2016. But as we move toward 2020, it is now in square to his moon and not that far away from his sun. This correlates with the precipitous drop in his popularity, and from my perspective, a near certain indicator his political successes are over. There is no way out. Neptune is a slow mover and will be hanging around these compromised Sun and Moon square degrees for years. Now look a little more, and what do you see? Saturn, a tenant of the difficult 12th at birth, is transiting in precise opposition to his zenith midheaven ruler Venus, which is also a tenant of the 12th. You would have to say this is really bad news, especially because we already see him downtrending badly, failing to get any traction, and mostly making things worse each and every day. And this transit comes at the most inopportune moment, when he really needs some luck and when people's approval would be pivotal. I'll tell you though, nothing like Neptune turning on you at the same time as Saturn, a planet that is implacable, applying karmic consequences. And notice it has already been in these opposite the ruler of the zenith degrees earlier this year, but will now park solidly there from mid-August all the way past the November 3rd election date. Indeed, on election day, it is precisely opposed. Good luck, Donald. You're gonna need it, but you're not gonna get it.